Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Well, Jasson Domínguez being dangled out there as possible trade bait, as, again, rumors that the Yankees might be able to move him potentially in some sort of trade if, again, the Yankees do happen to sign Cody Bellinger. So I'll kind of look at the whole thing. Again, I'm not really in favor of trading Domínguez, and I'm kind of perfectly okay if they do not sign Bellinger. Just kind of give Domínguez the job there to start the season like they did last year, and so hopefully takes that next step there. So I'll kind of give my take on the whole thing. And, what's the deal with the Mets now just signing all these former Yankees? Devin Williams now, the newest Yankee to cross over into Citi Field, signing that 3-year deal for $51 million to be their potentially new closer, again, if they also don't resign Edwin Diaz. But again, this is part of a seemingly pattern by the Mets. Last season we had Clay Holmes, and before that, Luis Severino. So kind of get to the whole thing. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcast. There's also the YouTube version of the show. Make sure you subscribe to that channel as well. And I did kind of address that, obviously, Devin Williams in the latest YouTube episode, getting signed by the Mets. Didn't really get to discuss it here much, and kind of been a little quiet here since the Thanksgiving break. And Mets making the surprising move of signing the former Yankee reliever to a 3-year deal for $51 million. Now, some of that $51 million is deferred. And just kind of, a bit of a head scratch because Devin Williams did not have the greatest of seasons with the Yankees. You would say overall is probably a disappointment. They bought him and him and Luke Weaver to be a 1-2, mega punch at the back end of the bullpen. Turned out not to be a case. He really struggled mightily in the first 2 months of the season, to the point where they had to demote him from the closer role. Then he had to demote him even further from a high leverage role. And yeah, he did bounce back a little bit, found himself. Had an okay ending to the season. No major blow-ups or anything in the postseason appearances, but not to the point where you think the Mets would run out to want to sign this guy. And again, one of the parties to it was Dave Stearns, the Mets GM currently, was also the Brewers GM. So you guess he probably just knows Williams for a number of years and maybe have a bit of a loyalty there, but maybe to a fault because Williams, maybe a couple of seasons ago, when he was considered one of the top closers in the game, definitely not at that level right now. But the Mets making that move possibly because maybe they don't feel like he could retain Edwin Diaz, who opted out of his deal. He's talking to the Mets and supposedly the Yankees as well, so the Yankees might also be on Edwin Diaz. Both Williams and Diaz will be 32 next season, so that might have to do with how many years they want to really go with either of those guys there. So again, I was surprised by the move, just because again, they're right across town. If you're in the New York market, you see what's going on Devin Williams, and this with the season he had there, I was just surprised they'd want to take that on. And I think the only reason because Stearns was the former Brewer GM, probably had to have a soft spot in his heart for Devin Williams to bring him in there. So again, just a little bit of a head scratcher there. But yeah, we've seen this pattern with the Mets, though. The previous offseason, bringing in Clay Holmes, who had a good run with the Yankees as their closer before he faded out. And then the 2024 season, the Yankees had to put him in a different role as an 8th-inning setup guy. And there he kind of rebounded a little bit. But then Mets signing him and then converting him back to a starter, which he really originally was with the Pirates. And early on had success, but as you knew was going to happen, previous years before that, he had been conditioned to be a closer and not stretched out fully. And, Clay Holmes eventually would fade out. And that's really the whole Mets' main reason for their collapse in the second half of the season, why they didn't even make the playoffs, is that pretty much all their starters burnt out and tired out there again, so they weren't fully stretched out, and Clay Holmes being one of them. I'm sure he'll be back again, try to get him as a starter as he signed a 3-year with them. Then in the year before that, with Luis Severino. Again, did not have a good final season with the Yankees. Had a bit of an oblique issue. Signed with the Mets and had an up and down season. Can't say it was a fully disappointment. Wasn't great with the Mets, and they eventually let him walk after his 1-year tenure at Citi Field, and now him pitching with the Athletics. What is it with the Mets? Is always looking for these former Yankees players. Another one to add to the mix, Frankie Montas, came to the Yankees, gave him absolutely nothing. A complete disaster. Even needed surgery. Ended up giving the Mets nothing as well. And then his season was cut short, of course, as well as the injury. And now we're finding out again he's also now going to need Tommy John surgery. So that's a 4th arm now. It seemed like the Mets brought in there from the Yankees. You see it firsthand. The guy's not good. He gets hurt a lot, and you sign him, and then again he turns out to be a bust. So of all of them, maybe Clay Holmes could become something. Devin Williams, let's see if he maybe a change of scene is a little good for him. But again, he struggled in New York, and last time I checked, the temperature in both the Queens and the Bronx are usually the same there. So I'm not sure what the situation was. We did see him struggle early April. Was it the chillier weather? Was it this the grip on the ball, the airs? So if he thinks he's going to be any better April in Queens than he is the Bronx there, then he might be in for a little bit of surprise there. So I don't know. Is it the Mets trying to hey, we could take your Yankee guys and make them better, and you guys drop the ball here? Is they trying to show up the Yankees? I don't know. Maybe, possibly. The former Yankee Juan Soto as well is probably the biggest name of all. Another guy who in the Yankee uniform, and right after the Mets scoop him in now, That's a little different situation because I'm obviously a marquee superstar player, so you can understand why multiple teams like the Mets would also be interested in him in that situation. But again, a former Yankee yet again signed by the Mets there, so trying to be antagonistic towards the Yankees and signing their former players. I don't know, possibly. They struggled with the Yankees there. I don't know if somehow they're going to come over the Queens and be that much better. And we've seen a couple examples on the Yankees side. Of course, you had Neil Walker at second base. That was back in 2018. But I think he still had a little left in the gas tank as second baseman. He had a little bit of pop in the bat there. So the Yankees signing wasn't totally gross. I mean, even if he wasn't a former Met, a couple good years with Pittsburgh. So I could see the Yankees being interested in regardless whether he was in a Met uniform or not. And of course, you want to go back further, the whole thing. Well, you signed Gooden, you signed Strawberry. That's true in both those cases, but I think a lot of time passed between Strawberry being out of baseball for a while, and obviously he played elsewhere. He played with the Dodgers, played with the Giants, so it put enough distance between his Met years by the time the Yankees got him, and Gooden as well. He was kind of out of baseball for a little while. Then, of course, he had the strike. And then the Yankees kind of gave him a shot there in 96 and at least was able to get a championship for them and then come back later on. But again, at least between the time he pitched in a Met uniform and the Yankee uniform, there was at least some runway and some room in between those stints there where it wasn't as gross as signing Devin Williams right away. Just a couple months ago, he was pitching in a Yankee uniform there. So a little bit of a difference. And good news in terms of, the here news that they might be in on Diaz. Yeah, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, again, going back to the comments of the Yankees payroll and stuff like that, I mean, Diaz making a chunk of money. Again, he had originally signed like a 5-year deal with the Mets. He was able to opt out after the year 3, so he's going to look for a big pay upgrade. Again, he's still probably considered one of the top closers in baseball, but of course, Devin Williams now is the insurance policy in case Diaz ends up elsewhere. If the Yankees land Diaz, that'd be great. Add that to Bednar, Duvall, and Cruz. See if they can resign Luke Weaver. I just don't think it's going to happen because other than Cody Bellinger, I just don't see the Yankees really spending any really additional free agency money on top of Bellinger. And it kind of gets to really the heart of the matter here, and that's because of Jasson Domínguez. And the speculation is that if the Yankees do have Cody Bellinger there playing left field mostly, and you already have Trent Grisham in center, Judge and right, what do you do with Jasson Domínguez, who you could say maybe a little bit 2025 was somewhat of a disappointment in ways. I'm not saying it's a total bust, but obviously he's not making much money. He's under control, at least arbitration control, till 2028. And then he's not a free agent until 2031, so you're looking 6 years from now. So, whatever team retains his rights, you do have him under control, making relatively cheap money in comparison to some of the other contracts. So that would make him tradable if the Yankees want to deal him. I just don't see it happening. I don't think it's a good move for the Yankees to deal him. I mean, first of all, the guy's only 22 years old. The fact that, all right, he's only 22 and he's not Mickey Mantle, or he's a bust, get rid of him. They gave him a fair amount of playing time last season. Again, he wasn't stupendous, wasn't great. I mean, he did play 123 games. And, they can't say that the Yankees didn't give him a shot. They did give him a shot, you would say. To the early part of the season, he was probably mostly a disappointment. And, I mean, the hitting was there, the stolen base was there, but we didn't really see the power that we experienced when he first came up with the Yankees in 2023 before going down with Tommy John surgery. And, of course, the power numbers he put up in AAA and AA, which is, where he got the nickname The Martian. We're all looking forward to him. In 2025 season, we were looking for him to have that big breakout season. Didn't come to fruition. Of course, had his struggles in left field, well documented as well. And many times had to be taken out late for late inning defense later in the game there. But overall, again, he's only 22 years old. I would still hold on to him and not look to deal him unless some really crazy circumstances have him, or you could get some mega trade to really bring us some sort of superstar here. Okay, then I'm open to almost any idea there. But the fact that he's going to trade him just to let him go just because there's really no room for him. And, he's too good just to be a full-time bench player. I mean, he should be starting and at least getting enough playing time at this point. At 22, you just want to see what he could give you there. So, yeah, I understand. Look, it doesn't worth him just keep him as a bench player. But you figure if he's not good enough as a starter, what do we do with this guy? Trade him off. If this whole thing happens with Bellinger where they just don't resign him, I'm okay starting the season again with Domínguez out there in left field. I know it probably makes the offense not as good as it was last season overall there, but perhaps, this could be the opportunity to finally really click in for him, and if he gets that full-time playing opportunity. And as I said before with Bellinger, okay, you could spend a ton of money on him, as well as Kyle Tucker, but stick it with Bellinger. This offense overall, outside of Judge, was not a good offense. You had Bellinger last season, and what did you do, especially when Judge went down during the summer part where the Yankees struggled? Did Bellinger light it up on fire there and carry the team? No. We know that, again, he's not this good hitter, but he also has some defense as well, so you're definitely going to lose a lot of defensive prowess there if you don't have Bellinger over Domínguez. I get all that, but you do have the opportunity for Domínguez to really break out and give you close to what you could have gotten Bellinger after paying Bellinger $30 million there. So if Bellinger decides to go elsewhere, you lose a little bit, yes, but I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. And if you want to look at some of the numbers, Bellinger hit 272, Domínguez hit 257. So, all right, yeah, you give the edge to Bellinger, but not by a ton a lot. It's not like Bellinger hit 300 there. The power obviously was the difference with 29 home runs by Bellinger, only 10 for Domínguez, and that was probably his biggest disappointment, and 47 RBIs compared to 90-something for Bellinger. So yeah, overall Bellinger is the better player at hand there, but Domínguez is also developing. As I said before, he's only 22 years old, so there is room for him to get much better than this. And if you want to just look at some other numbers, on base percentage for Domínguez was 331. Well, Bellinger was only 3 points higher at 334. So their on-base percentages were almost identical. And if you want to use the on-base plus slugging, Domínguez 719 versus 813 for Bellinger. So Bellinger, again, 100 points higher there. Probably a lot to do with the home runs and doubles as well there. But other things aside there, and the fact that you just, let's say if you keep it an open mind that Domínguez is going to develop a little bit and be a little bit better in 2026, I just think you don't really have a gun to your head to sign Bellinger if you don't really want to. And you could just start the season that way, and as we all know, you have other players in the mix, like maybe Spencer Jones. He could maybe have an opportunity to shine in spring training and maybe add him to the Major League roster to start the season. Maybe he gets a starting job, possibly. Or if you're somewhere at the trade deadline and you're really under the gun for somebody, all right, you can make some moves, you make some trades. You got LeGrand there, the pitching prospect possibly, or maybe some like a Chase Hampton, someone would want at the trade deadline. Or maybe that is the time you move Domínguez if his first half is a big disappointment and you package him with a couple of blue chips and maybe you can bring in an A-plus type of outfielder if need be. So I don't think the Yankees are under a gun right now to make any moves. And getting to this whole payroll thing of the Yankees want to be under 319 for next season. That's just Hal saying an idealism. I think if the Yankees have to make a trade or make a move to bring someone in, the person does have a lot of salary to him, I think they'll make the move if it makes sense. So I don't think they're married to being under 319 or even being under 300. I just think they just don't want to spend money stupidly if they feel they don't have to. But I think if there's a good move there that makes sense, I think they will take on the payroll. So, for all the people complaining they're not Dodgers, like that, okay, maybe they're not the Dodgers in that mentality, but I don't think they're total cheapskates in terms of they're not going to make a move unless it makes sense. I just think only if it makes sense, they'll make the move. And, you get to many other different situations, more recently with Garrett Cole, who originally opted out, then he opted back in with sort of a handshake agreement that will take care of you at a later date. So, I think if the Yankees need to pony up the money, if they need and have to, they will do it. I just don't think they want to do it stupidly as they have done in years past there. And again, we've seen them being burnt by a lot of contracts that just added luxuries of that they didn't need. And then again, just could throw money out the window when you see a team with like 1/4 year payroll winning World Series there. So I can understand the sort of anger in there of not wanting to spend money stupidly. But I think if it makes sense, I think the Yankees will do it. So still holding out that most likely they do retain Bellinger. But if that's not the case there, I think I'm okay starting the season with Domínguez, or just at least have a fair competition in spring training. Maybe Jones and Domínguez go at it there. Maybe it's Jones the left fielder to start next season. I mean, I guess it's a possibility. And you also have to think of after the 2026 season, because I know the Yankees locked up Grisham, who took the qualifying offer, again, to the surprise of many. Grisham is going to be gone after that. So you have to think about your center fielder for the future. And, Domínguez is a center fielder, even though he's playing left, and Spencer Jones is a center fielder, though. So you can sort of tread water with those two guys, for this season. But after that, you're going to need a center fielder for next season, because, again, I think Trez Grisham is going to be gone after 2026. And so that could be the time for, either Jones or Domínguez there. But you have to get them the reps, get them the at-bats to be able to develop there, and they're both young guys. I can see if Domínguez is like 26, 20, 27, like, all right, if it's not going to click with this guy, it never will. I mean, he's only 22, so give the guy an opportunity to click. And years past, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Like, someone like Domínguez would probably still be in the minors, and he probably wouldn't come up until he's maybe 25, 26 when he's fully developed. And so, the fact that everyone wants these, 21-year-olds and 20-year-olds up right now, right away, and if they're not great right away, then they're a bust. Get rid of them. So I still think Domínguez, there's a lot there to be worked on. We did the splits on the YouTube episode about producing much more as a left-handed at-bat there, even though he's a naturally right-handed hitter. But of course, more often than not, you're going to face a right-handed pitcher, so you're going to get more at-bats as a left-hander there. And again, 9 of his 10 home runs came from the left side versus only 1 from the right. But he is a power switch hitter there, so you don't want to give up on that raw talent. I mean, go back to Yankee history, whether it's, Mickey Mantle, think of someone like Jorge Posada, Mark Teixeira, Chili Davis, always having good, switch hit, Nick Swisher, power hitting switch hitters in the middle of that Yankee lineup. And Domínguez possibly has that opportunity to be one of those guys like that there. So you don't want to give up on too soon there, because if you do that again, you certainly regret it. So at 22, I still think that you should not trade Domínguez. You don't resign Bellinger, and if you don't resign Tucker, and I just don't really think the Yankees are going to be be on Tucker. This seems like he's going to cost more. And if you're kind of penny pinching a little bit right now, I don't see the Yankees going after Tucker. So I think it's either Bellinger or nothing there in free agency. And if Bellinger goes elsewhere, I think I'm okay, giving Spencer Jones or Dominguez a shot there in spring training and let one of those two young guys win the job. Catch you next time.